Okay, this is my lab 4. This is my timing diagram showing what I came up with. And this is my breadboard. I did kind of label it here, my X1, Q1, Q2, and Z LED. Just a disclaimer, my switches, every time I pressed the button, it was holding it down. So I disabled that and made my clock here for number 4. This is my X, and this is my clear. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. So we start off with clear being at 0. X is at 1 and Z is at 1. Okay, so I just changed that. So before we get to clock at 2, clear goes to 1. Everything stays the same. And now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. Okay, so I clocked at 2. At 2, Q remains at, well, Q goes to 1. Z is at 1. And Q1 is at 0. So now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 1, but before I do that, we see here that X goes to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 1. Okay, so at 1, everything remains the same. I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. Okay, at 2, everything remains the same. And then X goes to 1. So let's change that on the breadboard here. Okay, so X went to 1, and now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 1. Okay, so at 1, Q1 goes to 1, Q2 remains at 1, and Z goes to 0. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. At 2, Q1 remains at 1, Q2 goes to 0, and Z goes to 1. I'm going to clock at 1. At 1, Q1 goes to 0, Q2 remains at 0, and Z goes to 1. I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. At 2, Q1 stays at 0, Q2 goes to 0, goes to 1, and Z stays at 1. Okay, I'm going to clock at 1. At 1, Q1 stays at, goes to 1, and Q2 stays at 0, and Z goes to 1. Z goes to 0, sorry. Okay, so now prior to us going to 2, clocking at 2, X goes to 0. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. So at 2, Q1 is still at 1, Q2 goes to 0, and Z is at 1. So I'm going to go ahead and clock at 1. So at 1, I'm sorry, my bad, I messed up. Let me put it back. Don't stop. Sorry, X. Before I clock at 1, X goes to 1. Sorry about that. Little mistake. It happens. I'm human. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 1. Okay, so at 1, my Q1 goes to 0. Q2 remains at 0, and Z is at 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and clock at 2. Okay, so at 2, my Q1 remains at 0 here, and my Q2 goes to 1, and Z remains at 1. Okay, so now my last clock, which is at 1, I'm going to do that here. At 1, Q1 goes to 1, and then Q2 remains at 1, and Z goes to 0. That's just the end of my lab 4, my timing diagram, and my breadboard. Thank you.